Hello and welcome to Travelers Within. My name is Val Jon Farris, and I'll be your host and guide for this introduction video into what I call the SupraSelf. Existing just beyond the reach of our ego and beyond the bounds of our familiar identity resides a transcendent presence, a larger context of self possessing extraordinary capabilities. Think of the SupraSelf as a wise inner mentor and guide you can call upon for direction in your daily life. But beyond this mentoring, gaining access to this supra resource exponentially expands who we know ourselves to be and what we're capable of achieving in our lives. I wholeheartedly invite you to join me now for a fascinating glimpse into the power of the SupraSelf. Traveling within is my way of describing the inner journey work of personal growth, the lifelong process of coming to know ourselves at our deepest level and living authentically from it in our daily lives. The journeys I'm interested in are about illuminating the inner terrain of our psyche and revealing unexplored destinations beyond our familiar identity, and more importantly, beyond our identity's predictable capabilities and behaviors. The human psyche is complex and paradoxical. In some situations, we can be open and caring, while in others, withdrawn and selfish. And as compassionate and supportive as we can also be vengeful and destructive. Fear and uncertainty grip us in some areas of our lives, and yet we're unaffected by them in others. And likewise, depression and inspiration exist side by side within us, vying for our attention, the former sending us into the abyss of despair, and the latter elevating us to the summit of exaltation. I know it sounds like I'm describing bipolar disorder, but we all have contradictory energies moving within us. Being real about them and recognizing them and learning how to navigate with them and around them is very important. For those with experience in personal growth, you know this to be true, and you also know that trying to achieve a constant state of well-being, peace, and fulfillment is about as unlikely as attaining eternal bliss or unconditional love. The truth is, change and movement are the only things that remain constant in life. Planets move around their stars, stars revolve around their galactic centers, and all the galaxies are flying away from one another at breakneck speed. So why should we be the exception when it comes to certainty and stability? I believe the reason is that we've misidentified who we are at a fundamental level. The result of which is to solidify within us an underlying condition of isolation and anxiety. What if we have buried deep inside of our unconscious the conclusion that who we are is more like a noun than a verb? That is to say, we assume ourselves to be a static thing that exists separate and apart from other static things. From this fixed conclusion, an ever-changing world and universe is unsettling and can create within us a deep yet unconscious need to control the uncertainty that threatens us. There's no personal growth workshop, religion, or faith, and most certainly no drugs, alcohol, or possessions that will absolve us of this existential fear. So what will? There is a development process that resolves it once and for all, but it's not for beginners, and it's definitely not for those who are unwilling to explore their depths. And perhaps more importantly, it's not for those who cling to their old self and believe that they need to protect it in order to survive. But if you are someone who wants to grow and evolve with the movement of life, and you're willing to surrender who you believe you are for the possibility of who you can become, then by all means, let's get started. In this 45-minute introductory video, we'll explore 4 key aspects of this super resource. First, I'll give you an overview of what the SupraSelf is. Then I'll explain why it's the next evolution in personal growth. And third, we'll explore what benefits and value you can expect. And finally, I'll share with you how to go about accessing it. By the time we reach the end of this clip, I promise you, you'll know if doing the work of accessing the SupraSelf is for you. Before we embark on this virtual expedition, I want to offer a few traveling within tips. I always cover these things when serving as a guide for others, be it exploring the outer world or venturing within. First is to realize that achieving extraordinary results in one's life requires engaging in extraordinary experiences, positive experiences that challenge our limits, comfort zones, and complacencies. The material we're about to explore is positively challenging, and it will require your full attention and presence. The second point is that if you get overwhelmed or saturated along the way, pause the video and take a breather before moving on, as reflection time is essential, especially when traversing unknown terrain. I do suggest watching the entire clip in one sitting, however, as breaking up this video into fragments is really not the optimal way to engage in this journey. Finally, don't quit or give up if you get lost or become triggered. If you give up easily or lack the grit to see things through to the end, it might be best to quit before you start this journey. Okay, if you're still with me and you're ready for a sizable challenge, let's jump in. In order to establish a solid beginning foundation, let's spend a few minutes getting familiar with what this super resource is. The SupraSelf is a term I coined a number of years ago that refers to a higher faculty of consciousness residing within all of us. Its discovery came about by facilitating deeply introspective workshops and programs with thousands of people over a 3-decade period of time. The discovery I'm about to share with you could never have happened without the extraordinary courage and vulnerability of all those I've had the honor of working with and guiding over the years. By definition, supra means above and beyond, and self means individual presence. The SupraSelf is a larger context of being, an elevated presence within us that operates above and beyond our ego identity. By above and beyond, I mean a higher level of self-awareness and consciousness than we normally operate from in our daily lives. If you watched my YouTube channel's featured clip, you'll recall that as we begin to transcend our lifelong illusion of separateness and the limitations of our ego identity, we come into accord with a deeper truth about the nature of reality and our place within it. This expansive journey involves what I call traveling within, exploring the depths of our psyches to gain access to our deeper core essence and its extraordinary resources. Because the SupraSelf is not bound by the limitations of our ego or by our individual conscious self, it possesses an infinite wellspring of wisdom and knowledge, a vast interconnected resource that psychologist Carl Jung described as the collective unconscious. One way to grasp this abstract notion is, rather than assuming we transition from chapter to chapter within the book of our individual lives, our deeper nature is that we share in a much more expansive presence of being, or library of us. This larger presence includes our individual identity, but expands beyond it in terms of capabilities and capacity. Consider the orders of magnitude of knowledge an entire library possesses beyond what's stored in a single book, and the benefits of the SupraSelf become clearer. To fully grasp what the superself is and the role it plays in our lives, we need to understand where it resides within us and what it's composed of. Up until now, the inner terrain that leads to higher consciousness has remained obscure at best. While there are a variety of mainstream personality development models out there, none of them map out the evolution of consciousness. What I'm about to show you is perhaps the first comprehensive roadmap for how we evolve as conscious human beings. This is the roadmap I created over a 30-year period while facilitating my public workshops and corporate programs. I call it the awareness sphere. It's a container-like sphere for the evolution of self-awareness. Technically, it's a psychogenetic or psychological/genetic model that maps out the evolution of two essential aspects of human development: the maturation of our individual persona or identity, and the expansion of our faculty of higher consciousness. My life's work of traveling within, both in my own psyche as well as within the psyches of thousands of others, I've found that while every person's relationship with themselves and with their life circumstances is unique, there are common patterns and pathways of behavior that we all share in, aspects of ourselves that can be mapped out and used to navigate into unexplored regions within us. In the center of the model is the SupraSelf, the core essence of our being, and surrounding it are 12 arms that tap into its central core, each arm providing a pathway to the 12 phases of our evolving consciousness. The four colored areas, the stages of emergence, presence, transcendence, and essence, each contain 3 of these 12 phases. As we evolve through them, we gain greater self-awareness and arrive ever closer to the superself. While this two-dimensional model suggests a linear progression, its 3D version is based on the spiraling architecture of a telomere, a genetic segment of our DNA that interconnects all 12 phases simultaneously and without a hierarchy or linear progression. I won't go into detail about the awareness sphere in this clip, but I want to draw your attention to something quite profound before we move on. The awareness sphere is a powerful roadmap for navigating our way through the complex terrain of our ego self and into our core essence. But what's profound about it is the destination it delivers us to. Okay, get ready to go deep. As we venture into our core essence, we discover a hidden passageway that connects our finite self with the infinitude of the cosmos. While this linkage may seem far-fetched to some, modern science has proven that deep within the world of DNA and microscopic matter, at the quantum level, everything in existence is interconnected. The macro and the micro are one unified continuum, and we humans are gifted with the consciousness to explore its expanse. To be sure, it's a privilege to be alive, but to also possess the ability to directly commune with infinitude is a profound opportunity. So here's a supra notion to consider. What if our DNA draws its evolutionary brilliance from cosmological origins, and that just as our genetic architecture serves as a medium for transferring universal coding into our finite biological existence, the superself acts as a similar medium for transferring universal guidance into our consciousness. You might want to replay that last segment a few times. It took me more than a few takes just to successfully record it. Also, a few moments of reflection on what actually locating this passageway within you could mean for you and your life might be a good use of time. So moving on now, this notion of tapping into the cosmos and seeking guidance from universal sources is not a new idea. If you haven't viewed some of my expedition videos to ancient civilizations such as the Maya, Aztecs, and Toltecs, I invite you to do so. These wise life travelers possessed a profound understanding about the relationship between cosmological phenomenon and human consciousness. Few people realize that the sacred structures built by these ancient masters were not only temples of worship, they were also precise measuring devices used for tracking the movements of celestial bodies, cosmological movements that reflect the evolutionary expansions of human consciousness. Okay, this quote by Meher Baba captures the essence of the SupraSelf and its nexus between the finite and the infinite. Though the eye is small, the soul which sees through it is greater and vaster than all the things which it perceives. In fact, it is so great that it includes all objects, however large or numerous, within itself. For it is not so much that you are within the cosmos as that the cosmos is within you. Well, looking into Baba's eyes, you can catch a glimpse into the infinitude of the cosmos. And gazing briefly at that divine nose, mustache, and smile offers a glimpse into the whimsical and gentle nature of this finite man. The transcendent work of accessing the SupraSelf is like no other, in that as we cross the threshold into its vaster terrain, what we previously thought was bigger than us, like our unwanted patterns of behavior and automatic reactions, suddenly lose their grip on us. We find ourselves naturally evolving into more expansive, inclusive, and nurturing ways of being. Said another way, just one moment's glimpse into our infinite nature puts to rest a lifetime of struggles within our finite self. Okay, that was a substantial amount of material, philosophical material, to wrap your head around. I have faith in you that if you've made it this far, you can go the distance. Now that we've explored what the SupraSelf is, I'll share with you why I believe it's the next evolution of personal growth. To do so, I want to give you a bit of historical context about the movement. While I'll only highlight its evolution in the United States over the last few decades, similar offerings occurred in many other parts of the free world within the same time frames. America's interest in personal growth bloomed in the 1960s and early 70s with the advent of the peace movement, rock and roll, and the introduction of Eastern and esoteric philosophies. New Age seekers from every walk of life flocked to transformational workshops offered by EST, LifeSpring, Actualization, Summit, and a host of others. Additionally, Primal Scream, Inner Child work, Gestalt, and Jungian therapies, along with guru-inspired disciplines of yoga and meditation, were the groove of the day. And let's not forget the metaphysical offerings of astrology, tarot, medicine cards, the Enneagram, as well as their host of spiritual ambassadors, the angels, spirit guides, and totem animals. Along with the popularity of disco and heavy metal music, the 70s venues of self-help gained popularity into the 1980s until the mainstream media introduced programming such as Jerry Springer, reality TV shows designed to make a mockery of the valuable emotional work being done within the New Age movement. Knowing the drama factor boosted advertising sales, producers orchestrated contrived scenarios between victims and their abusers that resulted in banal entertainment on a national scale. While media moguls were overjoyed with their profits, the credibility of the personal growth industry suffered because of their exploitations. By the 1990s, the few transformational programs that survived the 80s began to wane in popularity. And in their place, along with glam metal, grunge, and hip hop music, less emotionally vulnerable offerings arose that focused on people's physical needs rather than psychological needs. Stress reducing hatha yoga, basic meditation techniques, well being spas, vitamins, and supplements became the lightweight avenues for personal growth seekers of the day. In the 2000s, along with alternative music, punk, and indie rock, personal growth morphed into a neural network of programs modeled after computer science, quantum physics, and machine mentality. Rather than deep organic emotional work, the focus was on the behavior and habit changing practices of mindfulness, emotional intelligence, and being in the now. Courses for rewiring one's mind, reprogramming our behaviors, and decluttering our operating systems gained traction. And the corporate world even got on board by offering a select few of these offerings, such as the practice of mindfulness in the workplace and discovering your why. This was all good work, but for the most part, it was limited to lessons for the mind rather than wisdom for the heart. Take the title Emotional Intelligence, for example. There's no redeeming value in becoming emotionally smarter. Trying to figure out why we feel the way we do is an exercise in futility because our feelings are meant to be felt, not understood. The more we try to use our mind to interpret or control our emotions, the less control we actually have and the more confused we become. I often share with those attending my programs and expeditions that the mind struggles to understand what the heart has always known. My purpose in sharing this overview with you isn't to invalidate these programs, but rather to position where they fit in with respect to facilitating higher consciousness. Having participated in and facilitated many of these programs myself over the years, along with delivering many of my own, I can attest to their value. I grew leaps and bounds, and I'm grateful for the learnings and transformations I experienced along the way. Also, just to be clear about my summary, it's only my take on the movement and was meant to serve as a general overview of trends. I'm fairly certain there were and still are professionals out there conducting deep and meaningful work. I also want to reiterate that transformational work is essential for beginning one's journey into the deeper work of transcendence. Allow me to clarify what I mean. Just about everyone is familiar with Maslow's hierarchy, the popular pyramid model that outlines 5 categories of basic human needs. By the way, Maslow didn't publish this work within a pyramid. It was an after-the-fact adaptation created by business professionals of the day. He never intended to suggest that our needs are structured in such a linear fashion. He was, however, clear that there are certain basic needs we must meet before we can take on more advanced or altruistic ones. Looking at the rainbow-colored levels of the pyramid, we can see where most of the offerings I touched on in my overview fit in. At the pyramid's base, programs address issues of recovery, rehabilitation, and mental health. Mid-pyramid, they're about belonging, healing wounds, rebuilding self-esteem, and behavior modification. And the higher elevation programs focus on reclaiming our power, clarifying our boundaries, vision, and life purpose. And finally, at the top of the pyramid are a host of programs that bring about meaningful life actualizations and transformations through the practices of identity reframing and more sophisticated epistemological redefinitions. Wow. But very few of these programs or offerings address the development processes for evolving into states of higher consciousness, or what Maslow called our transcendent needs. What few people know about Maslow's hierarchy is that it included a 6th need called transcendence from self. Maslow added it just prior to his death with the admittance that it was perhaps the most important development level of all because it embodies and elevates the full spectrum of human needs that come before it. It is the sixth level of development that my life's work is devoted to, not because it's better or more important than other work, but because it's where I've been called to serve. The distinction is between self actualization and self transcendence. Actualization is about becoming aware of and utilizing the best virtues and resources that reside within our identity. Transformational perspectives and attitudes that offer improvements in how we perceive ourselves and how we behave with others and in the world. Transcendence, on the other hand, is about expanding beyond our identity and its resources into a larger context, a supraposition, if you like, in which the self is not bound by the limitations of the persona or the ego. Rather than bettering ourselves, transcendence is about letting go of the self altogether and instead migrating into a more expansive state of consciousness. It's not about abandoning our identity or ego, but rather operating beyond its predictable agendas and automatic behaviors. Before we explore the benefits of transcendence, as I pointed out earlier, one of the key development principles Maslow proposed was that people need to attend to their basic needs before taking on more advanced challenges. If someone is struggling with issues of addiction or abuse, lacking safety or shelter, is in need of rebuilding their self esteem, or struggling with self destructive behaviors, the work of transcendence should be deferred to a future time. Okay, I'm checking in on you now. Make sure you're hydrated and have the available energy to embark on the third aspect of our journey, because it's coming up next. So, assuming you've made some healthy forward movement with your personal growth goals and you're ready for the next evolution, let's explore the potential benefits of accessing the SupraSelf. By engaging in this work, you'll no longer need to spend nearly as much energy or time fixing what's broken, protecting yourself from negative influences, meditating or reciting affirmations, or trying to adopt new attitudes and behaviors that honestly you most likely will never adopt. It's not that these practices will become obsolete or no longer have value, but rather that you'll no longer need to depend upon them for your personal growth needs or your life fulfillment. Okay, I really want to focus in on this benefit that I'm about to share with you. The greatest benefit to accessing the SupraSelf is that your inner resilience and fortitude will exponentially increase. You will also experience a consistent ability to be in gratitude and acceptance for your life, regardless of the challenges that you face. In other words, your capacity to accept the unacceptable will expand. You'll possess an unwavering trust in yourself and in life to deliver you to exactly where you need to be, right when you need to be there. And rather than trying to get better, get over, or get beyond all that threatens us or causes us concern, this work is about being with and fully embracing all that life gives us and all that it takes away. It's about embracing life's obstacles and accepting both devastation and inspiration. For when we fully embrace devastation with courage and humility, we discover that we can indeed be hurt, but never be destroyed. And when we fully embrace inspiration, we realize that we are its illuminating source, and as such, we can call it forth out of absolutely nothing. Much like all the stars within the cosmos, the SupraSelf shines brightly within us, bringing light into the darkness and warmth into the cold. It is our eternal essence and universal mentor that resides within our consciousness, forever reminding us that no matter what changes or challenges we may encounter in life, who we are is bigger and brighter than all of them. And perhaps the most paramount benefit of all is that we, like all the stars within the heavens, never shine alone. They gravitate together in clusters, nebulas, and spiraling galaxies, creating life nurturing environments within the void of space, homeworlds that selflessly give themselves to beings like us who trust us to care for them, to care for one another, and to sanctify all forms of life. While our finite self is minuscule in comparison to the vastness of the cosmos, our infinite self is fully able to embody its expanse. What this universal belonging and interconnectedness means is that when we make a contribution to just one other person, at the very same moment, we contribute to everyone everywhere. How extraordinary to know that we, this tiny expression of life, can make such a profound difference. Bringing it back down to earth now, I want to share a personal experience of transcendence with you that will give life to all these concepts we've been covering. The material in this video has been complex and challenging, but by inviting you to join me now on an emotional expedition, I believe you will arrive at a place of nurturing clarity about this work. This real-life adventure story, along with many others, is included in my book, Travelers Within: Journeys into Being Human and Beyond. Many people over the years have commented that this story I'm about to share with you touched them deeply and either reminded them of a transcendent experience of their own or inspired them to engage in one. I hope a similar outcome happens for you. A number of years ago, I was part of a mountaineering team that climbed to the summit of Mount Shasta in Northern California, a 14,000-foot ice climb that required special gear and well-rehearsed safety procedures. The ascent route we chose was shorter than others, but steeper and more dangerous due to crevasses and glacier fractures. In this picture, you can see us hiking in groups of 6 as we made our way to base camp at about 11,000 feet. Both base camp and the summit lie beyond the snowy peak in the distance. This photo was taken at base camp, where we spent the night before our early morning ascent to the summit. We spent the remaining daylight reviewing recent maps of the terrain ahead and our ice climb safety procedures. Traversing mountainside glaciers requires steel crampons for the boots and ice axes for braking. For those unfamiliar with the term, braking is a rapidly deployed safety procedure used if a climber loses their footing on steep slopes. It involves grabbing the axe with both hands, flipping onto one side, and plunging the sharp metal tong into the ice. A firmly planted axe serves as an anchor and stabilizes the climber until they can regain their footing. And while ropes and carabiners were not needed for this climb, the glaciers awaiting us were known to approach about a 70-degree angle in some spots. This near vertical challenge required that we zigzag our way up the steep slopes in small untethered groups, anchoring ourselves every few hundred yards to rest and reassess our route. We didn't get much sleep that night because to make it to the summit and back before dark the following day, we needed to begin our ascent no later than about 3 o'clock in the morning. Dark and early the next morning, and under a full moon casting an eerie bluish glow, we gathered together in a tight circle and reviewed our ascent plans, double-checked our gear, and each of us vowed to be team players and strong links in our climbing chain. As the moon disappeared behind the terrain above, we secured base camp and began our ascent. At about 13,000 feet, and as the sun reflected off the icy slopes, we came upon a massive and deep crevasse. We traversed around its left edge and began our zigzag strategy above it, to gain a safe distance. This was definitely one of the most dangerous parts of our expedition. One mistake or compromising incident by anyone on the team could mean sudden death. To grasp the size of this abyss, that thin ice extension pointing into the darkness is roughly the size of a human body. All went well as we zigged and zagged our way up the steep glacier until one fateful moment when the ice crampon on my left boot suddenly popped loose and I lost my footing. Falling backwards headfirst down the slope, I grabbed my ice axe to brake, but landed hard on my back, jarring it from my grip. In frozen terror, my life flashed before my eyes as I gained speed towards the crevasse. I was going to die. Then suddenly my body slammed up against something solid, knocking the wind out of me. Peering out through ice-covered goggles, I spotted dark images moving around and above me. Pulling the goggles from my face, I saw that my fellow climbers had formed a human net, catching me just a few yards before careening over the edge. I was in shock and totally numb. I was also totally vulnerable and humiliated. I had spent years being a strong and independent man, priding myself on not needing anyone's help, and here I was now completely helpless and unquestionably the weakest link in our climber's chain. Penetrating my moment of self-indulgence, voices flooded in. "We've got you, VJ. Hold on, buddy." And you know what I replied with? "Thanks, guys. I can take it from here." The words of a rugged individual, straight from the ego of a man who was determined to take care of himself at any cost. Then the actual cost came clear as pleas from my team. "VJ, stop squirming around and let us help you, or you're going to push us all over the edge." Wow. I have to tell you, that message got in. The reality of killing my fellow climbers so I could stay in control was too much to bear. Looking into their faces, I saw superimposed images of my father, brother, mother, sister, friends, and past relationships who I'd alienated with my stubborn independence. I reflected on the pain and frustration they must have felt by me not allowing them to support me. So many opportunities I had to accept the help of those who loved and cared for me, but no, I had to be in control and strong. And here were people who had just risked their own lives to save mine, and I was going to rip them off of that privilege and opportunity? How selfish and arrogant of me. As my team reattached my gear, stood me up, and reassured me that no harm had been done, feeling their care and acceptance was both nurturing and wrenching. My chest tightened and tears came to my eyes as I got another painful glimpse of how many times in my life I protected my vulnerability and shut people out. I would always tell myself, I don't need anybody, I can do it on my own. I justified my rigidity with the notion that I didn't want to burden anyone or put anyone out. But the deeper truth was that if I did open up to people, I would feel vulnerable and obligated to them. What an old and worn out story I'd convinced myself of. The moment we realize that our need for control is actually killing our aliveness is when we can finally let go and open. In that opening, my ego's indulgence and humiliation transcended and gave way to the inspiration of humility. The frozen armor of my rugged individualism finally cracked open and fell away, leaving me totally vulnerable and amazingly totally okay about it. Here, just a few hundred yards from the summit, on each side of me you can see two of the climbers who saved my life. As we turned uphill to make our final ascent, I found myself breathing into this new, higher elevation of self-awareness. While the air is thin at 14,000 feet, I had the realization that my inhaling and exhaling perfectly reflected the process of giving and receiving support. Exhaling represented the virtue of giving, and inhaling represented the vulnerability of receiving. The profound epiphany for me as we approached the summit of Mount Shasta, and which still lives within me to this day, is that being vulnerable and open to receiving support doesn't mean I'm weak, it means I'm human. At 14,179 feet, the atmosphere is an extraordinary crystalline blue color that embraces the curve of the Earth. The summit atop Shasta is a small rocky crater about 20 feet in diameter. 33 sunburned faces, grinning from ear to ear, sat together within the crater's embrace in an exchange of laughter and tears. After celebrating our joint accomplishment, we began the ritual of reading and signing the register book stowed atop most climbable mountains in the world. The one atop Mount Shasta is kept inside a green metal canister in a small nook under the crater's western crag. Each member of our team, like all those before us, took an opportunity to read and write dedications in the register. I was the last one to see it, and as I flipped through its yellowed pages, my eyes fell upon a dedication made by a climber way back in 1972. I'll never forget what he wrote. Father, I'm standing at the top of Mount Shasta today because of the love and support you gave me as I was growing up. It's because of your love and encouragement that I was able to succeed. And although you lost your legs in the Korean War and have never been able to stand beside me, Father, I want you to know that today I stand on the top of this mountain for both of us. I love you with all my heart and all my soul, your son John. I closed the book, stood up and walked to the crater's rim and took in the grandeur of the earth. Clutching the register to my chest, I experienced a deep, abiding compassion for all the world's fathers, sons, mothers, and daughters. I felt connected to every human being on this planet and every form of life in the entire universe. Just as my awareness sphere model maps out the pathway between the finite and the infinite, here I was actually experiencing it firsthand. While having my life saved was a profound opening for me, this was my transcendent moment that elevated me above and beyond my predictable ways of being and delivered me, mind, heart, and soul, into the infinite and omnipotent embrace of the SupraSelf. If you were moved and inspired by my transcendent experience, it tells me you have access to the SupraSelf within you. You see, you and I have something extraordinary in common. Not only do we share in the privilege of being a son or daughter, mother or father, we also share in a much more expansive family of origin, one that embodies all of life everywhere. What a profound realization it is to experience oneself as more than just an individual, but as a family member of the entire human race, worthy of all our greatest accomplishments and equally guilty of all our worst crimes. Living as a library of us rather than as a single book of I is a profound evolution of personal growth and for who we know ourselves to be. And the good news is that you don't have to climb a mountain or nearly lose your life to have a transcendent experience. I do honestly believe, however, that it requires engaging in experiences that nudge us out of our comfort zone and open us to emotions energetic enough to melt the glacier of our complacency or denial, and in some cases like mine, crack the ice of rugged individualism. Perhaps you've already had a transcendent experience and maybe just haven't recognized it as such. If so, you're a good candidate for engaging in this work. And if you haven't experienced one yet, I'll review some options now for how you can get started. The work of transcendence is not easy, It requires far more than simply attending a workshop or online course. The power of this work is the result of engaging in a broad spectrum of life experiences and practices. On my YouTube channel, I feature video clips that focus on both the inner world of personal growth and the outer world of real life expeditions. I do this because I've learned that in order to bring about transcendence, it requires engaging in both the inner and outer worlds simultaneously. The way this is accomplished is by setting a clear intention for engaging in a transcendent experience prior to embarking on an outer journey. It's also essential to prepare oneself and establish a proper mind and heart set for engaging in the deeper work that transcendence requires. The best way to begin is to allow a seasoned guide to help you navigate your way. I would be honored to serve in that role with you. One of the best ways to begin accessing the SupraSelf is to read my book, Travelers Within: Journeys into Being Human and Beyond, and work with its companion handbook. The reviews have been stellar, and many of my readers share that the combination of my transcendent life adventure stories combined with my guidance into the terrain of the awareness sphere has changed their lives. I'll put a link in the description below for you. There are a number of other activities you can engage in. You might consider attending one of my online space learning workshops, 3 months of curriculum held every other week, or participating in one of my upcoming expeditions to sacred sites in Central or South America. Attending either of these offerings is not automatic, however, as I do a get-to-know-you interview prior to accepting working with people. Again, I'll put links in the description below. Beyond these options, it's important to be part of a group or movement that recognizes the need for this kind of deep work, especially now in a world ever increasingly filled with isolation and shallow consumerism. Being part of a conscious community is essential. There are many such communities. In addition to my own, you can join. I'll provide information below for my Travelers Within website and Facebook community pages. And finally, making key lifestyle changes that support your journey into higher consciousness will become more important as you gain access to the SupraSelf. Society as we know it and the institutions that control it are not interested in personal growth or in having people explore their inner terrain. All the focus is on the outer world for obvious consumer-based reasons, as well as for reasons of control and compliance. I'll add a personal sovereignty playlist to my YouTube channel very soon, as well as many new clips, so please subscribe so you can receive these notifications. You're also invited to join our Metaverse Sovereignty Facebook group, a network of individuals making lifestyle changes that ensure their future freedom and accelerate their personal growth. This concludes my introductory journey into the SupraSelf. If you stayed with me for the entire process and gained value along the way, I commend you, and I'm enthused to know that you possess the resilience and dedication needed to engage in this next evolution of personal growth work. Please do me the honor of leaving a like and comment about what stood out most for you. And feel free to reach out to me, as I would love to connect with you. Also, please be one of those stars that shines in the nebulas together and share this video and my channel with those you feel will relate to it. The SupraSelf is important work, and I fully believe it is the next evolution of personal growth. I want you to know that you can count on me to remain committed to serving as a guide and friend to all those who are called to travel within. So until next time, stay grounded, keep your heart open, trust the process, and be with what is just as it is.